Namaskar viewers, welcome to this session of teleconferencing and the next session. In these two sessions, we will be discussing with you the story of the making of modern world. Now this story is connected to our MA course in history. The course code is MHI2 and the name of the course is Modern World. And the story that we are going to be discussing in this session and in the next session is actually spread and diffused throughout the course. So in a way we will be discussing the entire course in a conceptual manner. We will be doing it briefly, of course. You are most welcome to ask questions. You can ask your questions in either Hindi or English, and I would be very happy to take up your questions and answer them. My name is Salil Mishra. I am from the Faculty of History, and I have been involved with the preparation of this course on modern world. So friends, when we talk about the making of modern world, I think there are 3 or 4 questions which are important, and we can take up those questions, and through an examination of those questions we can actually talk about the making of modern world. First, of course, what do we mean by modern world, and when does the modern world begin? What are the reasons for considering one particular time as the beginning of modern world and prior to that as pre-modern or medieval world or medieval societies? So what is the dividing line? And what is the criterion for fixing the dividing line, for drawing the dividing line? How is modern world different from things that happened before it? So how is modern world different from pre-modern worlds, pre-modern societies? What is distinctive about modern world? That is the first question that we are going to take up. The second question will be, how do we introduce the modern world? How do we understand the modern world? What are the distinctive features of modern world? How does one recognize modern world? Is it just the world today? Can we replace the word modern with contemporary? Can we say contemporary world and treat it as more or less the same as modern world? Are the words modern and contemporary mutually substitutable? Can we substitute one with the other? And if not, then what are the ways in which modern is different from contemporary or today? Can we say that the world today, when we say world today, do we mean the same thing as modern world? If not, then what do we really mean by modern world? That would be the second question that we need to take up. The third question that we need to take up is that if by modern world we mean something distinctively different, dramatically different, a very distinctive, very different type of world, then how did we arrive at this world? How did this transition from something prior to it, whatever it was, to this modern world take place? That would be the third question that we need to take up. And the fourth question that we need to take up today, if time permits, is the making of the modern world. How did the world become to be the kind of place that it is? If we see the world today, and if we recognize the world today by certain features, certain attributes, prevalence of certain tendencies, certain trends, how did those trends and tendencies and attributes, how did they come about? How did they get structured into the world as it is today? So a comparison of modern world with things that happened before, an introduction, an understanding of modern world, a sense of the transition that occurred from the pre-modern to the modern, and finally the making of the modern world. These, friends, are the 4 questions that we need to take up in order to get a sense of what modern world is all about. So we can now begin with the first question. The first question is, how is modern world different from all that happened prior to it? Now, how do we decide the beginning of modern world, friends? Now, this has been an extremely interesting question, and this question has been handled in a whole range of ways. At an intellectual cognitive plane, it has been said that Renaissance that happened in Europe in the 14th and the 15th centuries, that is actually the starting point, and Renaissance can be seen as the dividing point between the pre-modern formations, pre-modern societies, pre-modern times and modern times. At the level of activities, at the level of things happening, at a material level, it is generally said that 16th century is the dividing point when a different type of, a certain pattern of trade and conquest and appropriation and migrations and settlements, it started, which changed the world, which began to change the world irreversibly, and which began to transform the world in a virtually unrecognizable manner. The world changed so much, so fundamentally and so rapidly that you could not really link it up to the previous times and the world, and it became very dramatically different. So that is really the starting point. We will go by the second starting point. We will say that 16th century is really the time, and we will go into the reasons why 16th century. We will say that this is the time from when, since when the world started changing in a very unrecognizable manner from earlier times. The continuities of the world began to be loosened, began to be eroded, began to break down, and very, very different, very, very new type of patterns began to emerge. We will go into why that happens. So that would be our starting point. We will say that 16th century onwards is the time when a new type of world begins to emerge, and we'll call it the modern world. Now, how is this modern world different from all that happened before? Earlier times, we will call it either pre-modern societies or pre-modern formations or medieval societies or medieval times or whatever. How are the two different? I think on a very cursory kind of a look, 3 or 4 kinds of differences can be easily seen. First, of course, is all pre-modern societies, medieval, ancient societies, were very, very diverse and disparate. They were either not connected with each other, or they were, even when they were connected very minimally, very marginally. A very loose manner. They were just loosely connected with each other through trade primarily. An elementary technology did not allow much greater interaction between these societies. Modern world, by comparison and contrast, is fully integrated and well connected. So one area in which the modern world is different from pre-modern societies is that when we say modern world, we are talking about world which is integrated and well connected, internally well connected. All its components are very well connected to each other. This was not the case earlier. That's one difference. The second major difference is that compared to earlier societies, the modern world is also very homogeneous. By that I mean that the political and social institutions prevalent in different parts of the world, in different societies of the world, are much more of one kind, are much more of a similar kind. So the kind of diversity in political and social institutions that we see in pre-modern times, that diversity is not there. It's much more homogeneous. That's a second difference. So it's much more integrated, internally connected, and also much more homogeneous. Thirdly, modern world is also hierarchical and vertically organized. Now this is a very, very interesting factor and a difference, and a factor which distinguishes modern world from pre-modern times. Friends, you may have noticed that of late in the newspapers and elsewhere, there is suddenly this talk about the world becoming flat. There is actually a book written, I think, by Thomas Friedman, which says the world is flat. And I think when he says the world is flat, he's talking about a kind of an equalization of opportunities all across the world. which has been engendered by the new modern technologies. Now, obviously, it's a very, very contested thesis, and I think it's far from it's far from consensual. I don't think there is any agreement, and there is a lot of disagreement with this. Obviously, the world is not flat, either in terms of resources or in terms of affluence or in terms of opportunities. If at all the world is to be seen as flat, then we need to go back to a world prior to 16th century, prior to 15th century. And it's then possible to look upon the world as flat. Not equal, but flat in terms of similarities, in terms of, not many highs and lows, flat. That begins to change. So we may say that the world may have been flat prior to 16th century or horizontal, but after the 16th century, the new world that emerges, it is very, very hierarchical and vertically organized, which means that it has an apex. The structure of the world is that there is a top, there is an apex, and deep down there are other societies. Now, this apex, when we say that it acquires an apex, it acquires a top since the 16th century onwards, we are talking about the Atlantic Europe, or the countries and societies located at the shore of the Atlantic Ocean. If we were to name the countries, we would have to say we are talking about Spain, we are talking about Portugal, we are also talking about England and France. Now, what happens is that this world, which is very hierarchical, which is very vertical, it acquires an apex, and that apex keeps rotating. It is not a fixed and a stable apex. It rotates, but it does not rotate very far. In about 1 century's time, it rotates from Spain and Portugal to probably Holland and to England and France, and eventually also it includes North America, which is but an extension of the European settler groups, European societies. It is a settler society in which migrants from Europe went and settled down. So it rotates, the apex rotates, but not very much. It rotates among a certain set of actors. And the rest of the world begins to be dominated. It becomes a part of the dominational orbit of the apex. So there are the dominating groups and the dominating societies and the dominated societies. And when we talk about the dominated societies, we are talking about the societies of Latin America, societies of Africa, these continents, and also the societies of Asia. So it's a very, very different type of world. Suddenly, it emerges as one world, but a world which is also vertically organized, which is a hierarchical world. There are leaders, it has a top, it has an apex rotates, but within certain actors, and the rest of the world consists of the dominated societies, dominated groups. So, if we were to make a difference, then we would say that the pre-modern societies were diverse and disparate. Modern world, by comparison, is fully connected and integrated. We would say the pre-modern societies were there was a heterogeneity, they were heterogeneous in the nature of their social and political institutions. Modern world, by comparison, is extremely homogeneous. Its social, political, economic, all kinds of institutions, cultural institutions are much more of a similar kind. And thirdly, this world is not flat. It may have been flat, but its shape changes. It is no longer flat and horizontal. It's vertical, it's hierarchical, it has an apex, it has certain actors, certain societies that dominate, certain other societies that are dominated. Now, it's very, very different from the kind of world that may have existed prior to the 16th centuries. And finally, fourth sense in which the modern world is different from pre-modern societies and formations is in the nature of its political formations and institutions. Now, in the pre-modern times, the nature of the very, very different types of political institutions proliferated. You had very large empires. You had the the Ottoman Empire, the Habsburg Empire, the Holy Roman Empire. In India, you had the Mughal Empire, the in Asia, other parts of Asia, you had the Persian Empire, you had the Ottoman Empire. These empires were large formations with a ruler, and which allowed for multiple cultural forms, cultural groups to exist, and the control was exercised minimally at the top. So you had, but the territory under their control, they were huge and large. So you had large empires, they were called empires, large political empires. You had small city-states, you had very small kingdoms, you had autonomous tribal formations. You know, in other words, the political institutions and the political formations were legion, they were diverse. They were not just many, but there were many kinds. They were all fundamentally different from each other. Now, by contrast, modern world, the kind of political institutions that come in the modern world and political formations, they are much more again of a similar kind. These political structures may be identified as nation states. By nation states, we mean externally sovereign and internally representative political units, characterized by cultural homogeneity. I said three things. I said externally sovereign, internally representative, and characterized by some kind of cultural homogeneity. Now, all these three things were missing in earlier types of political institutions. Now, these nation states, they may be big nation states, they may be small nation states, they may be very powerful nation states, they may be very weak nation states, but nonetheless, one nation state would really resemble the other nation states in terms of its internal attributes. A bureaucracy, army, finance departments, one type of financial organizations, and so on. Now, these nation states resemble each other, whereas the earlier political institutions and structures of the earlier times were really very different. There was not much similarity between them. I mean, if you could imagine, if we could just flatten out these temporal formations, and if we could have them all at one place, and if some forces from outside the world were to have a look at them, then they would find that a lot of these earlier political structures are extremely different from each other, whereas modern nation states, in spite of all their differences of size, differences of power, differences in the number of population, and yet they are all called nation states because they are all very similar to each other, and they are very similar to each other in terms of their internal attributes. And the three features that I talked about: externally sovereign, internally representative, and characterized by some kind of cultural homogeneity. All these three features would apply in all the nation states, whether they are big or small, whether they are powerful or weak. So that's another way in which modern world is different from earlier times, earlier formations, earlier societies, pre-modern societies or medieval societies. So friends, if someone were to ask you, how is it that modern world is different from pre-modern societies, then we can talk about four types of differences. Firstly, we will say that the pre-modern societies are diverse and disparate. By comparison and contrast, modern world is very integrated, well-integrated entity, and it's also internally connected to each other. Its parts are well connected to each other. Secondly, pre-modern societies were very heterogeneous in terms of their cultural and social institutions and practices. Modern world, by comparison, is much more homogeneous. Its various social institutions, political institutions are much more of one kind, much more of a similar kind. They resemble each other. They are not the same, but there's tremendous resemblance between the political and social institutions that obtain in one society and such political and social institutions of a different society. 3. Modern world is not flat but and horizontal, but it's vertical and hierarchical. It's vertically organized. And what we mean by vertical, that it has an apex. It's not a fixed apex, it rotates, but nonetheless it is an apex, and rest of the world really constitutes the dominated zone. So suddenly the world transforms into a place which consists of dominant groups and dominated groups, dominators and dominated. And it is easy to recognize them. They can all be identified. The societies of Atlantic Europe constitute the apex. That's the top. And when this apex extends to other societies and also across the continent, but that it happens when the United States of America becomes a part of this dominational orbit. And the dominated societies remain the societies of Latin America, Africa, and Asia. That's the third. And the fourth is that the political structures which were legion, which were different types of political structures proliferated in pre-modern times, the large empires, small city-states, autonomous tribal formations, and many others. Now all of those are replaced actually by nation-states. And these nation-states, again, they are not all equal. They are of a very similar kind in terms of their internal attributes, but they would vary. There would be large nation states and small nation states. There would be powerful nation states and weak nation states, and yet somehow these are all sovereign entities. So all nation states would be characterized by external sovereignty. Externally they are sovereign, internally they are representative of their people, of the societies, and also marked by some kind of cultural homogeneity. So these are the four things, four ways, four areas in which we can see the differences and distinctions between the modern world and the pre-modern medieval societies and times. Now let's move over to the second question. What do we mean by modern world? When we say modern world, what do we mean? What is our understanding of modern world? Now friends, when we say modern world, do we mean the world today, or do we mean the contemporary world? Are we just saying world as it has come to be constituted today, the world as it is today? Or are we talking about a very, very different, very, very distinctive type of world? Now, we live in a world which is in which all kinds of groups live. We still have the hunters, gatherers, we still have the agrarian groups. Are these modern groups? That's the important question. When we say we live in modern world, then is everything modern about the world that we live in? Obviously not. There is so much of the pre-modern that gets carried into the modern world. Sometimes in the same way, sometimes in a very transformed way. Religion is one example. Most of the religions really are a carryover from pre-modern times. All big religions are really old. They don't belong to the modern. They did not originate in modern times. And yet some people would argue that there is something very distinctively modern about them, because the manner in which these religions exist today and the manner in which they are being followed and observed, it's so different from earlier times. So they have also been transformed under the modern spirit. So the spirit of modernity has also entered into pre-modern institutions and formations. I think, friends, it's important to see that when we are talking about modern world, we don't just mean the world today, but we mean a very distinctive type of world, a very distinctive, different, unique type of world. There are large parts of the world which are actually not modern. So the emergence of modern world does not mean that the whole world has become modern. That would be a wrong expression. But it only means that a particularly distinctively different type of social and political formation that began to emerge in the world some 5 centuries ago, and it has actually transformed the world so much. It has emerged as a kind of a model which various other societies are also trying to emulate. So at a normative level, something dramatically distinctive has happened. A new type of model exists, which has become a model which other societies are trying to emulate. It is that model. So it is that which is modern. So what are the features of this model that we are talking about? If the whole world has not become modern, but modernity has arrived. New types of institutions, new types of forces, new processes, new structures have arrived. Now what are those processes, structures, forces, institutions? That we need to look at. Firstly, so what are the features of this modern world? And now we are discussing the features of the modern world. Firstly, modern world can be understood and should be understood through industrialism. That's something which is distinctively modern. Whatever industrialism did not really exist in earlier times, and it is this which has come to define the modern world. Modern society is industrial society and vice versa. We cannot talk in terms of, to say that modern society is industrial society is actually, it's not an explanation, it's waste of a word, because we cannot think of a non-modern industrial society or a non-industrial modern society. So the two words can actually be substituted for each other. What is industrialization? It's obviously, you know that industrialization, industrialism is a very new type of economic activity. But what does this new type of economic activity consist of? Well, I think it consists of 3 or 4 ideas. First idea is that it consists of the application of scientific knowledge to technology and to the productive processes. In other words, it links science and technology to the productive sphere, to the productive zone. These are not two different things. These actually become one. They don't become one, but they get linked to each other. They get connected to each other. So the productive sphere, the sphere of production, sphere of output, that begins to be that comes completely under the influence of science and technology. Technology gets linked to science. Science is no longer an area of philosophy, abstract ideas and principles. Science actually gets linked to technology, which means how to enhance output, how to maximize production, how to make production more efficient. So these questions become important. So first idea of industrialism is the application of science and technology to the sphere of production. Science at the service of enhancement of output, maximization of output. Second is creation of large scale production units. The big production units that we see today are modern creations, are modern productions, in which all the components are really integrated together. The labor, the capital, the technology, the raw material, all of them are at one place. This also means, thirdly, the creation of new types of organizations of production. Under extremely new things are happening. Constant updating of human skills. The human material which is employed in the industrial processes, these are not just any human beings. These are trained human beings. They need to be trained so that they are able to, they apply themselves, and they have to be, this training has to constantly change. They have to be constantly updated in keeping with the requirements of industrialism, requirements of the economy. So this modern economy is not just being run by humans. It's being run by humans, but it's being run by humans who are trained, and who are trained so much that they actually become robots. Fourthly, an elaborate and comprehensive division of labor, creating different types of specialists. Now, all these humans are trained, but they also don't receive the same kind of training. They receive different types of trainings in keeping with the requirements of the economy and industry. So there is a very, very elaborate, very intricate kind of division of labor, which is very, very central to the functioning of industrial economy. Now, this division of labor also existed in pre-modern times, but the scale and the nature, and the scale at which it happens is dramatically different from the earlier times. Next, constant growth in technology and a holistic pattern of investment. Now, all these things that I talked about, application of science and technology to production process, uh, large-scale production units in which various factors of production, raw material, labor, capital, human beings, all of them are together for maximum output. 3, constant updating of human skills, a very elaborate division of labor, constant growth in technology, and a very holistic pattern of investment. Now, all these things are dramatically new, and they are constitutive elements of industrialism. This industrialism is really the spirit of modern world, because it creates a modern society, it creates an industrial society, which is very, very different. So to understand what this nature of modern society and industrial society is, it would be important to see what is the nature of modern economy, which is in other words industrial economy, and what are the constitutive features of this industrial economy. All these factors that I mentioned, they put together, they are all geared towards a maximization of output and constant reduction in the cost of production. Put together, they bring about a revolutionary transformation in the nature of human lives. And this transformation has occurred in the last 3 centuries. So this is one feature of modern world, modern society, modern world. Modern world is an industrial world. It creates an industrial society. Industrial society is the product of industrial economy. Industrial economy is really, it consists of the application of science and technology to the sphere of production. It consists of bringing together at one place the various factors of production: labor, capital, raw material, human labor. It consists of constant training of human beings. The humans that are employed are not just ordinary humans. They have to constantly undergo training, and they have to be trained so much that they become like cogs in a wheel. They become like robots in some ways, and it consists of such humans. It consists of updating of technology. It consists of a very, very elaborate and systematic division of labor, and thereby creating specialists. Every man is a specialist. Every person who's involved in this process is a specialist. He's well familiar of what he or she is doing, and other people cannot do it unless they are also trained. So there are specialists, and a holistic pattern of investment, combining capital, labor, technology, all. So all this creates a new type of economy, which creates a new type of society. It also creates a new type of state system, a new type of polity. We talked about a new type of state system, which is called a nation state, but also a large mobilization of human population for political activities, which is in other words, what we are talking about, democracy. Modern world is a democratic world. Democracy is a part of modern world. We need to see what is, when we discuss democracy, sometimes there is this tendency very romantically to go back to talk about Greece and the Greek city-states and the functioning of democracy there. There may be resemblances at a very superficial level, but when we are talking about democracy, the essence of democracy, the substance of democracy, then it's important to see what is new and distinctive about this democracy. And what is new and distinctive about this democracy is that this democracy is a product of modern world and is a product of all that is implied by modern world. So both a new type of state system and a new type of mobilization of humans, which is democracy, is a part of modern world. Modern state systems are run by governments that are either directly chosen by the people or they indirectly represent the people, even when these state systems are not directly chosen by the people, because there are any number of dictatorships, authoritarian regimes in modern times, and yet these dictatorships, monarchical, authoritarian regimes are different from pre-modern empires. Pre-modern empires either ruled in the name of divinity or in their own name. These modern nation states, these modern states, rule in the name of the people. They claim to represent the people. They are validated by the people. They validate themselves by claiming to represent the people. even though they may not be directly chosen by the people, elected by the people. So modern world is also democratic. It's democratic in a very, very deep and fundamental kind of sense. Not in the sense of people electing the government, but in the sense in which the state systems validate themselves by claiming to be representative of their own people. Whether or not they are chosen by the people, that's immaterial. So in that sense, so a very different type of polity emerges. This polity on the one hand consists of nation states and on the other hand consists of democracy. Modern world is democratic in that sense. The third feature of modern world is that this modern world includes large-scale urbanization, creation of large cities, emergence of new classes, the capitalist class, the middle class, the working class, erosion of traditional communities and their replacement by anonymous mass society, increasing individualization of the population, decline of religion, decline of the hold that religion had, beginnings of secularization, a loosening of the central authority of religion, and an increasing secularization of life. Now these three things, I talked about three things. The modern world can be recognized by three things. What are these three things? I said a very, very distinctive type of economy. In other words, a distinctive type of polity and a very distinctive type of social structure. And all these are actually connected to each other. Because we have a distinctive type of economy, that creates a very distinctive type of social structure. It also creates a very distinctive type of political structure, very distinctive type of political institutions. Which means that a society like this, what I'm saying is that a society like this cannot be governed and controlled by the state systems of the earlier times. So it's not just an accident that at a time when we have an economy which is based on growth and the idea of growth, we have an industrial economy, that at about the same time we begin to see the emergence of nation states. Nation states that are representative, they are national, they are coercive, they are intrusive, they are efficient. It is, the two reasons are linked to each other. It's because we have the industrial type of economy in society, the industrial economy, that can only be handled by a state which is efficient, which is representative, which is coercive. Earlier type of state systems certainly would not be able to handle this kind of a society. And we have a new type of social structure precisely because we have a new kind of economy. What is the new kind of social structure? I said this new kind of social structure is characterized by large-scale urbanization. By urbanization, we mean two things. We mean creation of new cities and enlargement of the cities. The modern cities are much, much bigger than the earlier cities. Cities existed, cities have existed in history, but the scale, their scale changes and their nature changes. Modern cities are distinctively different from pre-modern cities. So urbanization means two things. Urbanization means creation more and more cities and the enlargement of cities, large cities and more cities. By more cities, we mean that a proportionately much larger proportion of the population stays in the cities. And this is linked to the industrial forms of production in which various factors have to be brought together. Atomization. When various people come, then obviously the people who lived in a traditional community life, that life is no longer available to them because modern economy does not permit the continuation of that type of life. People must leave their traditional cultural nests, their homes, their villages, and they must come into unfamiliar, uncozy circumstances, modern cities, alien cities. Now in this kind of alien cities, their identity marks, their tags, their orientations, all of them are different. What happens is, as a result, that the traditional communitarian structure becomes weak, begins to be eroded, and begins to be replaced by individualization. Modern man is more an individual, and he's no longer an active member of the earlier types of communities, because he's had to perforce leave those types of structures. Secularization. Modern world is increasingly being secularized, or secularization is a very important process and force in modern world. What is secularization? I think in one sentence, secularization means the thesis of secularization is that religious faith and observances tend to decline in a scientific industrial society. Now, why does this happen? We are friends. We are coming to the end of. We've got about 2 or 3 minutes left. We'll continue carry on this discussion, and after we stop, then 15 minutes later, when we come to the second session, then there will be a continuity, and we will go on discussing the same thing. So we will just continue with a break of 15 minutes. You may look upon this as not as 2 sessions, but as 1 session with a 15-minute break in between. So why does the power of religion, why does religious faith and observances decline in a scientific industrial society? Well, friends, there are basically 2 reasons. There is a structural reason and an intellectualist reason. The intellectualist reason is that modern economy, industrial society, industrial economy begins to transform lives in such a manner that religion had not been able to. So the prestige of modern science and technology increases, and as this prestige increases, that of religion declines. These two are really like rivals, science and religion. As science increases its hold, the hold of religion declines. So science acquires its prestige and religion loses its prestige from the minds and hearts of the people. The control that it exercised, that lessens or begins to lessen. Second reason is more to do with structures. Religion is all about the celebration of a community life. Outside the community, you cannot have really a religion. There is no individualist notion of religion. Religion is a celebration of community life. Now, in modern times, under impulses of modern economy and modern processes, these communities begin to be eroded. It's hard to recognize them. And these communities simply disappear. Modern communities, modern types of communities begin to emerge. Therefore, the structures, the nests, the places which housed religion, they themselves get eroded. As a result of which religion also begins to be eroded. This is really at the heart of secularization, the thesis and the process of secularization. So modern world is based on urbanization, it's based on individualization, it's also based on secularization. Now these 3 things are a part of the modern social structure. Now this modern social structure is linked to modern economy. This modern economy is linked to the modern state system. So social structure, economy and polity, all 3 of them are connected with each other. And they support each other, they are held together by each other. This is what we mean by modern world, because these are 3 important constitutive elements of modern world: a new type of economy, a new type of social structure, new type of polity, and they are linked to each other. Now friends, this is our second question. In the first session, we took up 2 questions and we had started with 4 questions. We will take a 15-minute break and then we will take up the other 2 questions, and that will conclude our discussion on the making of the modern world. Thank you very much. We will be back in 15 minutes time.